I'm Ken Martin, for those of you who don't know. I work for the American Philatelic Society. I want to welcome you to the show and to the first day ceremony for the United Nations. And of course, our speaker, Chris Calley, has a phone call. But I'm gonna start with a little bit of an overview. The United Nations hasn't issued postage stamps since the UN was first formed. The idea of the United Nations issuing its own stamps was actually, anybody know who proposed that? We'll make this Argentina. Very good. What year? What year did they propose it? Yeah. 47. And Greg's involved with the United Nations Philatelic International, if I got the organization. So there is an organization, a Society for UN Stamp Collectors. I'm sure that he would be glad to share membership information with anybody who might be interested. So a little bit a ringer in the audience, a little bit unfair. So other than Greg, when did the UN issue its first postage stamps? Anybody know that? 51. Thank you, Ralph. So yes, the first United Nations stamps, and what was the denomination of the first UN postage stamps?
6 cents.
Somebody said it. $1. Very good. They were issued, I think, October 24, 1951. They were a success, and they sold out within days. And that, of course, was just for New York office of the United Nations at that point. But similar postal agreements were reached with the Swiss and Austrian postal authorities. In December 1968, an agreement between the United Nations and the Swiss Postal Telephone and Telegraph Enterprise enabled the Geneva office of the UNPA to issue its first UN stamps in Swiss francs. They were issued October 4, 1969. And Austria, the Vienna UN office, was the third one. The agreement was reached in 1979, June, with the first stamps being issued in August of 1979. United Nations stamps represent a number of themes related to the organization, obviously. Environment, endangered species. I think Chris may have been involved in designing one of the endangered species, as well as stamps for the 50th anniversary of the United Nations. Was that with your dad or by yourself? That was with your dad. So United Nations stamps, United Nations is, they argue, is the only organization which is neither a country nor a territory that is permitted to issue postage stamps. I think some people might say there have been other organizations. There's certainly been agencies of the United Nations. And they're issued in the home country's currency, so to speak, the office's currency, so US dollars, Swiss francs, and the euro currently. Previously, the euro one of different denomination before the euro at one point. United Nations stamps are miniature works of art, which have won international design awards. They're created by artists from around the world, printed in different countries by the finest security printers. They don't have to worry about US stamps being printed by a US printer. They can go to any printer they want. Not so much of an issue. And stamp collectors appreciate United Nations stamps not only for their innovative designs and universal themes, but also because it's still possible to collect every United Nations stamp ever issued for not a lot of money, really. Since its creation in 1951, the United Nations Postal Administration has issued a little over 1,000 stamps, I believe. With that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Chris Calley. Many of you know him. Chris Calley has been a stamp designer for the United States, for the United Nations, and for a number of other countries. He did not design the specific stamps that are being issued today, but we did reference a couple other UN stamps he's previously issued. So please welcome Chris Calley.
I'm just going to read you, the APS put together, you may have already read it in the American Philatelist, but I'm just going to read what they wrote about these stamps, and then we're going to do our unveiling of the stamps. So, the stamps are called End Violence Against Children. And here's a quote from the preamble to a United Nations Declaration of the Rights of the Child in 1959. Take these off so I can read. Mankind owes to the child the best it has to give. In more than 55 years since that was written, the United States and its United Children's Fund, we know that as UNICEF, continue to campaign for children's rights, safety, health, and well-being. To further its awareness campaign, the UN Postal Administration will issue a set of 6 End Violence Against Children stamps here today at APS Stamp Show. Violence against children and adolescents occurs everywhere, at home, within families, in schools, community, and public places, the UNPA said in a news release. It occurs during the conflict and even times of peace. Just because you can't see violence, it doesn't mean it isn't there. And we all know this all too well from seeing horrible things on the news. In 2013, UNICEF launched a global initiative to end such violence. Under the banner, Make the Invisible Visible, the initiative aims to raise awareness as a first step towards modifying attitudes, behaviors, and policies. And I noticed in a lot of airports, I was in Baltimore today, and there's signage all over the place for trafficking, stop trafficking. They've got pictures of, young girls. If you see something like this, tell someone. So they're really, besides these stamps and besides the UN, the message is getting out to the public, I think, which is great. The United States normally issues stamps in denominations based on its headquarters in the US, New York City, Austria, and Switzerland. The US denominated 49-cent stamp carries a theme of armed violence reduction, while the, you know what, we should probably unveil those, and then I can read this about the stamps. So here's the grand unveiling.
One at a time?
One at a time.
What office is that?
This is,
It's in euros. So it's the Austrian office. And that's in Swiss francs. So it'll be the Geneva. And this better be in US dollars.
okay, so here's what they say about each of the stamps. The U.S. denominated 49-cent stamp carries the theme of armed violence reduction, while the $1.20 stamp takes on... beautiful design can work in any direction, and, and it's true. I actually thought that looked better the other way.
And he's an artist.
Yeah, from an artist's perspective, all kidding aside, from an artist's perspective, these are really striking, powerful images, to convey a real sense of, dread. I mean, it's scary what they've done showing this, this wolf, wolf not in sheep's clothing. And I think it really conveys the message really, really well. So even though I didn't design the stamps, kudos to the stamp designer. He did a really great job, which brings me to who the stamp designer is. Chris Sharp of New York City illustrated the stamps. He specializes in advertising, design, publishing, and editorial clients. Sharp, who has lived in Norway, works in several different styles, including animation. His clients have included American Express, Ann Taylor, Coca-Cola, Forbes, Newsweek, and many other businesses and organizations. These are his first design stamps for the United Nations. And then, well, I'll give you the little nitty-gritty. The stamps, which are 50 millimeters by 35 millimeters, are produced individually in panes of 20. And then they have, for more information about the UNICEF program to end violence against children, you can visit www.unicef.org. So again, I think these stamps are really wonderful from an artistic design perspective, as well as it's a really important message, and it's a really important theme to get out there, whether it's on stamps or billboards in airports or anywhere. So I love the stamps. I hope you guys do too.